Well, I was thinking, we've been together a long time now, and I've been thinking about you lot during lockdown, but I'm starting to think that, you and I are the same. We kind of communicate really well, we're really good together, but I think we need a relationship. I think I'd like to start a relationship with you. Like, seriously. What do you mean you're not ready for a relationship? What do you mean you don't do relationships? SharePoint, you're breaking my heart. Hey PowerAppers! So today I really want to talk about relationships. What's a relationship? Well, we all know what one is, at least we think we do. But in terms of data, what's a relationship? So there's lots of data sources out there that are relational. CDS is a relational data source. And when you play with CDS, you're going to find relationships that are cut above the rest. Why? Well, SQL's like super relational database extraordinaire. Has been since the dawn of computing, right? But the difference between SQL and CDS is how the data is rendered inside of PowerApps and what you get back from your record when you call it in. Word of caution before we go any further talking about relational databases. Don't try and build a relational database in SharePoint. You can kind of fudge it, but you're just going to end up with sticky fingers. It's not a great experience, and it's going to lead to problems later on. SQL and CDS is the right place for relational data. So put it there, put it where it belongs. The difference between SQL and CDS is that when I call a record into PowerApps, let's say, for example, a book, right? I call a book record into PowerApps. I'm going to get back some additional things. So I might get back the author of that book. And I'm not just going to get back the author of the book in one flat bit of data. I'm going to get the author as a relationship. So I can see a bunch of information on the author. And I might even be able to see the people who have read that book or that book has been sold to from a shop. And I'm going to get those children back. And I'm going to be able to easily traverse between the book entity, the book record, right, and the child record or the parent record. Right? That is very, very powerful. It reduces the number of filters you have to write, the number of lookups you have to do, the number of calls to data sources that you have to do. It's going to make your app run faster. It's going to make the user experience better. And, you're just going to be able to do so much more faster and easier and better, and just everything's going to be cool. So let's get into it. But before we jump into PowerApps, we're going to look at data and we're going to look at how to structure it, because I found over the years that before you do anything in the CDS, you need a plan, and some very clever people have been very kind and helped me understand those plans and how that works. That would be Mr. Huntingford and Mr. Rory Neary and like a whole bunch of other amazing data people out there. Kimberly Morrison, talk to me about data, made me understand data and maybe understand the terminology. And I'm going to share that with you as well. So let's get into it. So let's talk about data before we talk about relationships. Most data that you're going to come across in the world is flat, right? And it's our job when we come to encounter a relational database to break that data down, right? So let's take a list of books, for example. And here we've got some fields, and some of those fields repeat, and some of those fields are naturally kind of parental or grouping fields. So let's just take like author, right? So if we think about it, like we've now got some book data, which is going to be fairly unique to each book. And then we've got the potential to have some common data with an author, which is an entity in itself. So that's how to think about entities within the common data service, like they are things normally, right? But let's take that one step further, right? So we've kind of like, we now, there's more to do. It's not just that one thing. And this is where you really need to kind of plan your data out with the common data service. And you need to do this ahead of time, because if you don't make something a related object now, it's more difficult to make it one in the future. You've got to do a bit of a migration, a bit of moving things around. So it's really important to plan out your schema, which is the shape of your data now, up front. And that's not to say it's difficult to change it later on. It's just more troublesome. So yes, there are times where you build an app and you kind of building data at the same time, but generally this is the best kind of way of doing it, right? So I'm going to go and abstract that out a little bit more. So I've got my book data, and I'm going to think about, an author, the categories and genres, a library, and a language, right? And they're going to be our kind of parental objects. These are going to be in sort of above the book record, as it were, in a diagram. And this process of breaking down data into pieces, it's called normalization, right? So let's just look at relationships. Now, what's really important with relationships is how you draw them out. So we've got our book and we've got our author. We've got many books to one author. And this many to one, one to many terminology you're going to hear a lot when you start talking about relational data. There's even a way of drawing it out, right? So you draw your entity and you draw your other entity, and then you put a little line between the two to say that they're linked. And then you kind of draw this funky little thing that says, like, there's potentially lots of these books over here. And then you put a line on the other end, the one, because that's kind of delineating a one on the author. Now, there's a lot of other bits that they put on here. They have like one or many, so they'll do like the little sort of three tripody thing and a line as one and many, and they'll put a zero on the line as well to say none, one or many to describe it out. And look, there's a whole course on that. So go and look up the terminology around that. What's important is that you learn to draw this because it's important in your planning stage. So I love this awesome little tool called DrawIO or diagrams.net, which is a completely free drawing tool. It's great for drawing out entity relationship diagrams. I wholeheartedly recommend it. Very rarely do I create anything in the CDS, any solution in the CDS, without making one of these to help me visualize and others to visualize the data model, because there isn't one of these out of the box in the common data service. It doesn't have an entity relationship diagram. You can use some tools from something called the XRM toolbox, which I'll link to in the notes. But even so, you have to draw it out. You have to move all the things around on the screen to make it all work. Yeah, it's great, but if you haven't built the entities yet and you're not at the stage you're doing it, you need to plan, and this is where I go to do it. So it's all great. So what we're going to do is let's look at the concept of a reader, right? And I kind of want to do some relationships. So I want to take that one to many. I'm just going to kind of flick the changes on. This is how you use the tool right now. Everything after that bit. So I've got a library. A reader can be in, well, theoretically, actually, in this example, they're in one library. You can only have one library. It doesn't really seem enough. Like, actually, we probably want a few more libraries. We probably actually want that to be many to many. So many readers in many libraries, right? Because you could be a member of more than one library. And this is why it's good to plan this out, because you can kind of visualize it. And I'm going to link the book to the reader, right? And there are many books to many readers, right? Because I could read more than one book, and that would be the right way of doing it. Now, just to simplify things down a little bit in our app, and for the purposes purely of the video, I'm going to have one library to many readers, and I'm going to have many books to many readers. And I've got this set up already. I've got this author, genre, language, library set up already. Now, in the real world, this isn't actually going to work, right? Because I may have many books that I have read, right? Like a list of books I have read, but it's not actually granular enough. What I really need is something that we would refer to as an intersect entity, which is a way of saying, look, there's a reading record here. And that reading record is going to be there to kind of say, well, I took the book out of the library on this date and I returned it on this date, because I might want to take that book out multiple times. And you may want that chronology. So to draw that intersect entity, it would look something like this. So you could say, like, there's one book to many reading records, and there's one reader to many reading records. And this intersect entity is a way of having that many-to-many join between book and reader without them being there. So this is why it's so important to think about how this structure works, right? So we're going to go and build an app now. We're going to look at one-to-many, many-to-one, and many-to-many, and how they work in PowerApps and how you set them up in the Common Data Service as well. So I'm in the Common Data Service now. I'm in make.powerapps.com. I've navigated to a solution, because you should always build everything in a solution, never build without one. And I've got a library solution. Inside my library, I've got entities like a book, category for a book. I've got a book review, a book type, a library, an order, if I wanted to order some more books, a reader and a reading record, and an app called Reading Record, so I don't get those two confused. But I haven't got that author or the language thing yet. So let's just look at that and how I would create that. So let's go and create language. This is pretty cool now, because it kind of provisions it in the background. So we're going to call it language. And what I always do, I put a little space at the end of the display name, and you get a little spell check there, just because, if you spell that wrong, you're actually giving it this logical name at the same time, which is the name of the entity in the back end, and it's, you can't change those. So make sure you spell it right. Right, as the tip from a dyslexic, make sure you spell if you spell check this stuff. So I have my little space at the end there. Make sure I delete that, because you don't want like that trailing space to become a problem later on, because it can be. And I've got my plural name. Now my display name must always be singular, never plural. That's the job of the plural display name. So never call this like languages. It's always language, and the plural name takes care of itself, right? My display name here, I'm not going to call that language. I'm just going to call it the name of the language. You'll see why in a minute, right? And I'm just going to hit OK on that. I should really give it a description as well. So in here, I should say the written language of the book, right? Of a book. And that's going to start provisioning in the background, and I can start adding things now to my entity. So we're probably going to want something like the Azure language code, just in case we want to do some auto translation, so we could kind of stick that in there, but we're really digressing. But I can start adding those relationships. So the first relationship I'm going to add is one language to many books, right? So I'm going to scroll down. I'm going to pick my book entity there, and it's going to say, oh, it's going to just jump out of that. It's a bit of a hiccup there, right? Okay, so this is what it's going to be called on the book entity. So now I'm creating a field from the language entity on the book entity. If this blows your mind, we'll do it the other way around in a minute, and we'll go to the book entity and relate back to author. So that's going to be fine. The lookup field display name is going to be language, but what we should do is just the lookup field name, which is the logical name, because everything in the Common Data Service has a logical name and a display name. And if you don't know that, we'll make a video on it soon. We should suffix that with ID, right? Because that's going to help us know that this is a lookup field, like it's going to be a a related field. So I'm going to, in code land, I'm just going to see a GUID there, and I really want to know that that's not something else. It's related to another record. I can go and do a whole bunch of stuff here. So I've got this relationship name. Now, a lot of the time I change this. I'll say that is language, and I'll go like 1n underscore book, because it's better from a descriptive perspective. If I ever encounter that, I know exactly what it is. We could have a relationship, a description here, which we should have, which will be denotes the language of a book, right? And then some advanced options, right? Now let's get into this now, because this is where and I believe this is, correct me if I'm wrong, guys, like I'm still learning, the database cardinality comes in. So this is where like referential integrity takes over, and this is the type of behavior between the parent and the book, right? Now, like at the moment, this is set to referential and remove the link, but I can kind of do like parental, where and it displays, so any action taken on the parent record is also taken on the child record or entities, which means if I delete the parent record, then the child record will also delete. Now just think about that. If I removed French from my database and I accidentally and inadvertently deleted all of the French books, that would probably cause a problem. So you want to make sure that you're paying attention. It defaults to referential, right? And it tells you here, like remove a link, and it restricted delete. So that's a really good one there. You might want to restrict the deletion of it. And then there's this custom behavior thing, which is really cool. And this is where it gets super in depth. So now I can kind of say, look, do I want to cascade all? No, actually I don't. I kind of want to remove the link, or I can restrict it so it doesn't disappear. There's just so much stuff there, right? And there's a whole books on it, and there's a lot of help out there in the Microsoft Docs. So if you want to drill into each one of those, go for it. But for today, we're going to look at actually building them in Canvas apps, and we can come back to this at another time. So I've now just created that relationship, right? And what that looks like on this entity is a bit weird. So when I look now, changing from relationships to fields, I don't actually see anything different on the fields of this entity, right? That is displayed to me here. Now, and even if I go like all fields, I can't see anything that's saying books, which was what I'd expect to see. However, in PowerApps through the connector, I'll be able to see on languages, I'll be able to see books within the languages, right? And we'll look at that in a minute. But if I come to relationships, I can see that I indeed do have a language related to a book, right? Now, let's go and create author. So I'm going to come back here, going to click a new entity again, and I'm going to say author. And there's authors, there we go, right? And what we'll do for simplicity, we'll just leave the full name, right? So we'll create that. Now that's created, we're going to come out of author because we don't want to do a one-to-many. We want to do it from the book side of things. So let's go into the book entity. So we're going to create the relationship now. So I'm going to go from book. We're going to say many books to one author. Right. Now, this, again, it could be many to many because you could have two authors writing a book and all that kind of stuff. But in this specific demo, there's only one author for each book. And this is where the planning comes in again, ladies and gentlemen. This is where that planning comes in every single time. You can't get away from it. Right, so let's find author. There we go. So on this entity now, you see this is swapped around. I've got my lookup field that's going to be created on book rather than me creating it from author on book. I'm creating it now on book and relating it to author, right? Like we did before with language, where we created it on language. Yeah, I'm hoping that's clear because it gets a little bit hazy. We should change that lookup field name, put ID on the end of it. We should do our thing with our books. So we'll say N1. I think we're creating it from this end, and them's the breaks. To author. Still not actually kind of standardized that yet. I wonder what everyone else in Dynamics does. I'd love to hear. Put it in the comments if you've got like a methodology for naming this thing. I'd love to know what it is. And I'd say like the author for I can't type of the book, right? Okay, awesome. And we'll leave all that alone again. We just won't mess with that. So I've already created a many-to-many between book and reader in this particular entity, but I want to show you how to do it. So I'm going to go many-to-many, and we'll do it with a count this time, because a count is kind of like what you'd have if you were a family who had a library card. Let's say, I know my local library, we have one family account for everybody, and we have many contacts inside that. So again, planning the data. So we got it's a completely different affair. This no kind of referential integrity backwards and forwards, no way of deleting. There is this, like, you see it says gets hard, relationship entity name here. This relationship entity name, invisibly behind the scenes in the common data service, they're creating a join table. So when you do a many-to-many relationship in SQL, you actually create a table that sits in between with a primary key and two foreign keys that sort of like link together. And this is doing that for you, and we don't get to see that table, right? And this is where many-to-many gets a little bit complicated, and it is a bit of does mess with the mind a little bit, but it's okay. We're gonna cope. It's also one of the reasons why people like that intersect entity that I showed you earlier on the diagram. They prefer that because they can reach out, see it, touch it, feel it. We don't like arbitrary things, us humans. We like to be able to touch it, feel it, and understand that it's there and give it a little stroke. So we kind of got some data entities linked up. We've got some relationships linked up. Now let's get into PowerApps and try and put something together. So let's keep this super simple. On the screen in front of me, I've got a gallery that contains the books entity, right? And I'm just kind of sorting it by when it was created. So that's it. On this side, on the other opposite side of the screen, I've got a form, and that form is linked to the selected item in that gallery. And I've got the put some fields in there. One of the fields I've put in is the author. And I put some authors in. I haven't got anything in languages yet, so I'm going to go and make some languages in a minute. But we've got some authors, and this is as easy as it is. So once there is that relationship and that understanding between the two, all I literally have to do, I shall delete this to show you, is go fields, add, author, bang, it's in, move up to where it was before, and I can just kind of drop down and I can select from the related entities. Simple as that. No filtering, no looking up, no nothing. PowerApps is doing it natively through CDS, and that's the power, right? Like, yes, it's premium, but by God, is it worth it? So this particular book is by that guy. It's one of my wife's books. I don't have anything in languages yet. Now there's like many ways to create data, and you create data the same way. There's a really handy dandy way of doing it in the common data service though. So if you go into your go into my library again, and I got my languages there, and oh dear, I'm holding down Alt. I've got my languages there, and I'm going to just kind of go. I've got like the base form, which would just be the name of the language. So I'm not going to change it. And I can just go into data and I can just say add new record. And it's going to use the main form for the entity to allow me to create stuff. So actually I want English, and I'm going to save that one and go new. And now I need French. There we go, save that, so I'm there. One thing to note as well, which is really cool, once you've saved it, on the end of the URL up the top is the GUID for the record, which can come in right handy if you're mucking around in Flow. So I'm now in PowerApps, and I can just refresh my books entity here. So go and refresh that bad boy. It's going to reset our form, but that's no bad thing, right? So go in there, and then I've got my languages. I know that book's in French, and I'm just going to go submit, right? That's as easy as it is. When you create it up there, it automatically cascades down everywhere. It's awesome, right? So let's break it down a little bit. Let's kind of like look a bit deeper into what's going on under the hood, and look at some of these things where I talked about being able to walk across stuff. Let's see. Right, I've got a book here. I've got Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, right, by Douglas Adams, and I want to see many of those books, right? So I'm just going to navigate to another page, and I kind of built this little thing to add a book. So I'm just going to say like Douglas Adams. I think that's how you spell it. Maybe not. Douglas. There we go. Should go and search Google Books and bring some books back. So I'll say Life, the Universe and Everything, and The Salmon of Doubt, and we'll have that one as well, right? So we've now got a bunch of books in our library by Douglas Adams, right? And what I need to kind of do is to go and relate those to Douglas Adams. So I can just go and do that. So I quickly made a bunch of relationships, right? I'm just going to grab my gallery here of books, right? And I'm going to plop that on a new screen. And on that screen, I've got a gallery of authors, okay? So I'm just going to plop that over there. And what I want to do is show you how, traditionally, to do this in SharePoint, in SQL, this is what you've got to do. And it's important because we're going to learn something here as well, right? So filter, books, where the author, and we need to get to, this is the author record on the book, and we actually need that magic GUID that's created on every CDS entity. If you want to know more about that, I'll be making a video on that shortly. So author.author, bit weird, but that's the magical GUID ID, the primary ID of the record, right? And we're going to make that equal to the gallery of authors, which is the gallery on the left hand side of the screen, dot selected dot author, right? And close that off, and boom, my first author there selected is Sarah Critchley and her excellent book. And then if I click Douglas Adams, it filters. If I go Guillermo del Toro, Jules Verne, there we go. And I'm just going to refresh my data source. I don't think I refreshed it. I probably haven't refreshed authors either. When you're working in PowerApps, you really need to make sure that when you're making amendments to data, you do a refresh. It's not like that on the end users app, but it is on the makers app. So boom, because we refreshed it now, we can see it. So I've got all that kind of awesomeness in there. Got my Jules Verne, got my Sarah Critchley, and I've got all the books I put in there for Douglas Adams. So I can swap between the two, as you would with any data source. It's just this weird author.author thing. But that's not better. I promised you better, and it's not better. Okay, so let's make it better, right? So how about we look at this entity over here, this entity which is the author's entity, and we use the magic of CDS to traverse it, right? So let's flip this around. Let's get rid of filter completely. Let's get rid of that, and we're going to say, look, I want the selected record, the selected author's books. Okay, so gallery of authors dot selected dot books. Okay, bang. and it's going to work in exactly the same function. No like mad whatever, no kind of like filtering and blah 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 blah. I bang, got it straight away, right? Super powerful, super cool. What is also great is that you'll notice on this particular thing here, I've got a little problem there where the created on that actually needs to be title. There, right. So I haven't got the author's name. So let's get the author's name in there, right? So we'll just plop that in there, and we'll just say like make that like 14 or something. Author's name, right? So how am I going to get that? So I can go this item dot author dot name, and you see there I've walked up a level. So I've gone from the book, and now I've gone to the parent of the parent object within inside the relationship. So if you think about parent and child, many being the children, one being the parent, I'm now going from the many to the one, right? And you could see there I had everything exposed, right? So I've got like the name of this. The one thing I can't do is go author book. So I can't go like into the author and then down again. I can't go up and then back down again. It doesn't allow us to do that. So if I wanted to kind of like click and see all of the books that the current, like from this record, I'd have to do that the traditional way, but it's still brilliant, you know. What I could do is do this in a number of ways. So let's just leave that as name, right? So I've got, what I could do is I could display all of these in this gallery underneath the little Ujima flip there, right? So I could kind of go, if I wanted to, this item dot books, right? Because it's got that that reference there, and I could go like, you know, pop an image in that little gallery that's underneath there. So let's go for where's my media image? So there we go, and I can go like this item dot thumbnail. I think I've got dot thumbnail, and it should all go off and get it. Or maybe I've not got thumbnail populated. Cover. There you go. It was cover, not thumbnail. And there you go. Like that's the power of it. That's why it's so cool, because I can go up and I can go down, and it's brilliant like that. Imagine doing that with SharePoint, and look, no delegation warning, right? There's no, can you see any like little yellow exclamation mark? Was there any blue squiggly writing anywhere? You cannot do that in SharePoint. Now, what's brilliant in the background here, explicit column selection and the intelligence that the Common Data Service connector works on is looking at the app I'm building and understanding what data I need to use, and it's only returning that data. So it knows that I want these things, so it goes and gets these things, and it leaves everything else behind. And it's super, super quick, you know, like it's connecting directly to the database. It doesn't work like the other connectors in Power Platform. That's why it's so damn quick, right? So that's super cool. Now let's look at how to use that with a patch function and how one would go about creating these relationships with code and moving them around, right? Because there's one elephant in the room we haven't addressed yet, which is many to many, which is a bit weird. So we'll look at that in just a sec. So before we look at many to many, let's look at patch, because the easiest way to do many to many is through some formulas. So let's get into patch and relationships first, right? So I've got two things here. I've got a book at the top and I've got a reader at the bottom. And I've got an ISBN number that I would paste into this box and a reader ID where I paste into this box, right? And I could scan the barcode on the back of the book, and I could scan the barcode on the user's library card. And once those two things are full, this button would appear. I've enabled it so you can see it. And let's have a little look at what's inside of it, right? So we've got a little concurrent statement going on here saying, you know, if there is a relationship unrelated, and this is exactly what we do for the many-to-many relationships, right? So, but in I've got a reading record here. So I'm like, I want to relate the book to the person, and that's what's happening up the top. And we'll look at that in a minute. We'll look at that many-to-many in a minute, right? But let's look at the patch that creates a reading record. So this is where I was talking earlier on about an intersect entity. So that reading record would be a record that says, hey, Steve took the book out of the library on this date, but he might take that book out many times. So each one of those would be a record of Steve taking the same book out, but we might want one relationship that guards the top of that says, yeah, we know Steve's definitely read this book, but just not how many times, but we know he's read it. So like two variants of the same thing. And you might want that for your analytics. So let's have a look at that patch statement. The patch statement is very simple. What we do is we pass in the record, right? There's nothing more complicated than that. We don't even have to go to the expense of doing a lookup or this, that, and the other. It's just simply the record's in the system. You give it the whole record. You don't give it the GUID. You don't give it the name. You give it the whole record, the whole thing. And that can come from anything. It can come from a collection. It can come from a gallery. It can come from a variable. It's just looking for the shape of that record with that GUID inside it, and PowerApps automatically knows what to do with that relationship. How cool is that? I mean, that is just like, that's cool, right? And it works. Like, it just works so well. So when you're creating this, so the reader is this thing at the bottom here, and the book is this gallery at the top, right? So that's the checkout books gallery, and this is the checkout readers gallery. And all I'm doing is saying that the reader is the checkout reader I've selected or that we've scanned in, and the book is the one that's been scanned or the one that we've put in the ISBN number for. That is it. So nothing more complex, right? You put the whole record in, the whole record out, in out, shake it all about. Yeah, that's another story. So let's have a look at this. There's a little bit at the top here, and we're kind of, you know, opening the curtain to what you will do when it comes to model-driven many-to-many relationships here, and that's using this awesome relate function, right? So this special piece of code at the top here is saying if this is not in this one's table, what does that mean, right? So when you're looking at many-to-many, in the middle of it all is this invisible entity. Remember I said there's an invisible entity in the middle? So we've got to look and get to that invisible entity, right? And to do that, we say gallery checkout selected reader. So singular, yeah, the singular reader in, and this is where it gets confusing. This is the most confusing bit, in gallery books selected readers. Yeah, selected readers. That's the book entity, like the book. This is the book entity we're talking to now. So this is the readers on this side and the books on this side. And I'm saying in the books list of readers is this one in it. And to get to it, I have to do readers.reader. Yeah, because I want that GUID. I want that unique, super unique number. So I'm saying, is the super unique number for the reader inside of the list of books, the books list of readers super unique number? And if it isn't, in this particular case, because it is not, then I want to create that relationship. And to create that relationship, I use the relate function, right? It's as simple as that. Greg Lindhorst and his team have done an awesome job of keeping things simple, naming things that make sense. It's the relate function, right? 10 points to Gryffindor for anyone who knows what it is to break a relationship. That would be the unrelate function. We'll look at those in a minute. So let's have a look at the relate function. The relate function is broadly similar, right? So I want to look at the gallery for the checkout of books, right? So the books entity. And I want to say this for the selected books, list of readers, put this reader in that book, in that list of readers for the book. Yeah? Confused? Yeah, I thought you might be, but just think about it again, right? It's the list of readers for a book, and I'm adding the readers to that list. And it works the same the other way around because it's many to many. So if I have found the reader and I want to say the books that this reader has read, put a book into that list. Now, you might be thinking, oh, this is really cool. I could do some really cool stuff with this. And you can, right? But by the same rationale, you can't. And I'm going to show you the one thing that PowerApps can't do with many-to-many relationships. And it's currently, yeah, it just currently doesn't work and it goes completely bonkers. But, and it, you know, it's completely unusable, but it's good to show just for learning purposes, right? So you're not going to do this in any kind of production app, right? So I've got a reading manager here, yeah? And I've got my people who are readers, and I have my list of books, okay? And I've got this little toggly thing up here, and I can select a reader. So let's select Brad, right? There's Brad. God, everyone wishes they looked like Brad, don't they? And I've got a checkbox on the book. And let's have a little look at that checkbox. So we've got Brad is selected. I've got my checkbox, and let's have a look at the three most important things on any checkbox, right? The default that sets whether the checkbox is checked or not, the uncheck event handler, and the check event handler, right? So in our default, we've got what we saw before. We've got, and this is the reading managers gallery this time. So reading managers readers. So that's this one over here, right? Reading managers readers. Yeah. Reading managers readers. This is in the default. Selected reader. So the selected reader, right? And it's this is that GUID you see there. You can see the big gobbledygook GUID is in this item, this book, Dirk Gently's list of readers, right? Is he in that? Yes or no? He's not. Okay. So what else do I have in these galleries? In each of these galleries, I have a gallery and a gallery. So I've got my list of books and I've got my list of readers. And inside my list of readers, my gallery of readers, I have a, oh, sorry, that was a dog. I have a secondary gallery, an embedded gallery of books, right? So I'm going to try and show all of the books that this person's read as I update them. It's not going to work, but it will if I refresh things a few times. That's why the refresh button's on top of the screen. And then in the books gallery, I have an inserted list of books, right? So I'm going to try and display, sorry, inserted list of readers. God, I'm confused. And I'm going to try and display the readers that have read that book, right? So let's go for it. So I've got Brad selected, and I'm going to say that Brad has read Dirk Gently and Life, the Universe, and Everything. Okay. Now nothing appears straight away, right? So I think we'll go into preview mode just to be on the safe side, and I'm going to hit refresh because you have to refresh for many-to-manys to take account. Now it's turned up on one side, but it's not shown on the other, and this is where many-to-manys aren't happy. So it's happier doing the relationship on the other side, displaying that first, than it's going to display the ones on the book side. So it's happy to do the reader's side because we've told it to do the reader's side in the formula, and that's kind of updated. But we haven't, it doesn't know to automatically update itself backwards, right? Confusing? Yeah, I know, it really is. And this is why you don't do it this way. But the formulas are the same, right? So we're going to look into formulas in a minute. And now if I hit refresh again, we've kind of waited enough time for that to populate. And now I've got Brad here and Brad there. But look, the tick box has gone away. So now let's refresh again and the tick box is back. So it's just a weird, janky PowerApps thing. Were you to do this with one record in a drop-down box, with one record selected, the only record selected on the screen, and a number of drop-down boxes, you would be fine. It is just because I'm doing this in two galleries and I'm trying to do it both ways. And the only reason I'm trying to do it both ways is so I can demonstrate to you what it looks like, right? So let's add another book, After the Universe and Everything. And look, see, again, it's really slow, and I've got to do that refresh sort of 3 times for it to happen. Let's have a look at who have I got down the bottom. Cindy down there, right? So we'll give the Salmon a Doubt and Life, the Universe and Everything and Dirk Gently, right? And it will go over that side first, then it will sort of come on this side, and we may or may not get what Cindy's read. You've got to go really slowly at this thing to get it to kind of take, and even then it's like it doesn't do it sometimes. So there we got Cindy selected now. There we go. Life, the Universe and Everything for Cindy. Right, there we go. So we can see there are now many books related across. So let's have a look at those formulas. Like, obviously we're not doing it this way, we're just doing this to look at the formulas, so as an experiment. So let's look at the OnCheck, right? The OnCheck has got that relate thing that we had earlier on, and this time we don't even need to go crazy, we're just going to throw in this item. Yeah, that's it, this item. We could go even deeper, we could go one deeper and go for the good, but it will take this. And this is why it's so low code, no code, right? So that's what we're saying. Relate the selected reading manager's books to this book. Job done. And then back the other way for OnCheck. What's it going to look like? It's just going to say unrelate. It's exactly the same. How cool is that? Like, it's exactly the same. Now, if we break this down on that other app, when I create the relationship, it's seamless because we're doing one-to-one. The code isn't getting confused with itself because it's not embedded inside of itself and doing all sorts of craziness. But this screen is just doing that because I'm purposefully doing the crazy bit. And that's pretty much it. We can look at the gallery, and the gallery for the readers is this item.books. Boom, easy peasy. And again, like inside the gallery of books, I've just got this item.readers populating the gallery for the readers. It is simple. But like I said, if I just had one drop down to go through each reader individually, it would be so much simpler. But when I change readers now, you can kind of see this update. And I've done this in production with many-to-many, and it works beautifully. But you just need that one thing selected, and you're good. But if you try and do many, then it just, like, if you're trying to have many on one side, many on the other side, it just goes nuts. Anyway, that's pretty much it. One thing to say, to break a relationship, you can move the unrelate. You can use the unrelate function. But if you were patching, you can use blank, right? So let's say, for example, let's just go up one level to the book checkout, and if I was blanking, if I had a button that said delete and unrelate these two things, and I didn't want to use the relate function, I could just throw blank in there, and it would nullify that that relationship. So just remember, for many-to-many, that book thing, we're going to say the list of readers that this book has is this reader in it. That's where that in thing comes in. And then to make the relationship, it's relate, and then to unrelate the relationship, it's unrelate. Yeah, there is a ton of documentation on relate and unrelate, written by Greg Lindhorst, and he's absolutely awesome, and he explains it in really easy fashion on the Power Platform website, link below. I really hope you enjoyed this video. I've been wanting to make it for absolutely ages, but I just haven't had the chance. And I'm really grateful that you've watched it. If you do like my videos, please do subscribe. Follow me on Twitter. Ask questions on Twitter as well. Like, there's a whole community there ready to help you for PowerApps. And the Power Addicts will just like rally around you and help you with whatever you need. So, yeah, super awesome. Have a great time. Speak soon.